Hello, welcome to How to Hunter. This time we are on Stone Guard Heroic and we're doing it on 10 man. Now I'm aware I've not done a normal mode guide for this boss, so we're just going to go straight into Heroic because the tactics and the abilities on the boss fights are actually pretty similar. There's only really one major change on Heroic. So we'll start off by going over the normal mode tactics. If you're familiar with the normal mode version of this fight, follow the link in the description. That'll take you to the bit where we talk about heroics. Okay, on 10 man, we're going to get 3 of these guardians up randomly. They're going to be picked each week. On 25 man, you're going to get all 4 of these up, and each one of them is going to bring a particular set of abilities. It can get a little bit confusing at first, understanding what these different abilities are, but remember it how I remember it, and that's purely by the colour. So we have the Amethyst Guardian, that's purple. He's going to put purple patches down on the floor, you can see them there. Basically get out of the way of those. We have Jade Guardian, which is green. This is going to do an AoE damage onto the entire raid. You can't do anything about that, so you can kind of ignore that. We've got Jasper Guardian, which is red. That's going to put a linking chain between you and a random member of your raid. And we've got Cobalt Guardian, which is blue, which is going to put some kind of like frost trap AoEs down on the floor. There's some on the screen for you there. Basically, stay out of the way of those. If you get caught in one, it's going to freeze you in place for a few seconds. However, each of the Guardian's abilities can be negated if they are casting their own petrification spell. What that will do is, as this bar that I've highlighted on the screen fills up, you're going to be slowed down, but it also negates their damage that they're going to cast by 90%. So in the case of the Amethyst Petrification, what that would allow us to do would be to walk through the purple patches on the floor without taking much damage. Okay, to recap, things on floor, bad. Chains, bad. Unless you've got the colour coordinated power bar charging up, in which case, hey, it's not so bad after all. Now, in 10 man, you're only going to get 3 of these Guardians up. It's randomly picked each week. If you're lucky, you're going to get the Jade, Cobalt and Amethyst Guardians picked, and if you do, congratulations, you've got an easy mode fight. If you're rolling in 25 man, or if the Jasper Guardian gets picked on 10 man, then unlucky, the fight is going to be a bit of a pain in the ass for you. The Jasper Chains are going to link you and another player together. It's fine as long as you stay close together. I think it's within 10 yards and you're not going to feel any effects from that at all. However, if you spread apart more than 10 yards, you're going to get a stacking debuff. That's going to do a lot of damage, and it's probably going to kill you, so just be careful of that. If you get 15 stacks of Jasper Chains, then the chains will break. So the way to break chains is essentially to wait for the Jasper Petrification bar to fill up. You see it charging up at the bottom of the screen now, and at that point we can move apart from our Jasper Chain partner and kind of do what we want. There are always exceptions to that rule, but the rule of thumb, if you've got deadly boss mods installed, then there is an option in deadly boss mods to tell you when it's safe to break the chains, and that's a lot simpler than me spending time explaining how the mechanic works. Okay, the only thing to add from a DPS point of view, kind of fundamental and important for this fight, is if any of the Guardians are on their own. So in 25 man, I think you normally have 2 Guardians tanked on their own and then 2 other Guardians stacked together. If you're ever DPSing a Guardian that's on its own, it's going to take less damage due to a debuff that it's got. So ideally, you want to be focusing your DPS on the 2 Guardians that are stacked together all the time. They're going to get swapped around with the tanks doing their thing, so always make sure you're focusing on the right group of Guardians. So what is the difference between normal and heroic mode? In heroic mode, we have these crystal shards that spawn where the Guardians were at the start of the fight. They spawn after about 4 or 5 seconds. And we can click those, we can interact with them, and when we do that, we're going to get a buff that allows us to light up the tiles on the floor. We can light up, I think it's 7 tiles. It's not based on speed, so if we go faster, we're not going to be able to light up more tiles, we can just do it quicker. And what those tiles do, they give us, again, another stacking buff that is going to increase the damage done by us, and also for healers it increases their spirit by 1%. So ideally we want to be lighting up as many of those tiles as we can. You're looking for around 80 as a minimum. It's absolutely imperative that when the floor is reset and it's time to light those tiles up again, that is your #1 focus. You can kind of relax on DPS a little bit but don't be thinking more about DPS than instead of the tiles, because obviously 1% increase each time. If we can get that stack up to 100, then it doesn't matter if you've wasted a few global cooldowns on filling out the tiles. Okay, so you can't just click on any old crystal, because when you click a crystal, it's going to give you a debuff that's essentially going to inflict damage over time, and it's quite a lot of damage, so where possible, avoid that. So how do we know which crystal is the right crystal to pick? Well, it's based again on the petrification power bar at the bottom of the screen, which we can see it there. We've got the Jasper petrification up at the minute. When that comes up, we can click on its coordinating colour crystal. So for Jasper, red, cobalt, blue, jade, green, and amethyst purple. Okay, so at the start of the fight, we're going to pick up the relevant crystal. We're going to fill out the floor. We're going to aim for around 80 stacks of energized tiles. The more the better, so if we can get it up to 100, then that's excellent. The floor is going to reset at 75% and 40% of the boss's health, and then we have to do it again. Okay, that's it for abilities. Let's now look at it from a hunter perspective. So let's rewind back to the start of the fight, and let's look at it from the offset. Tank's going to pull. We're really going to focus straight away on the 2 guardians that I clumped together. There's always going to be 2 guardians clumped together on this fight, whether you're in 10 or 25 man. At the start, we're just going to open with our normal rotation. We're going to pop an explosive trap down, and we're just going to wait for a petrification power bar to appear. This time we've got amethyst, so we've picked that up. For some reason my pet isn't attacking. There he goes. And now we're just going to start filling the floor out. As a hunter, we do have quite high maneuverability, so we might be asked by our raid to activate the crystal a couple of times so we can fill out more of the floor. Like I say at the start, I'm not really DPSing here, but if you look at the meters, I'm top still. Everybody should be focusing on the floor rather than DPS at the start. And by that I mean, don't completely give up on DPS, but you can use your instant abilities, things that you don't have to stand still for. If you like to use Aspect to the Fox, then whilst we've still got it, then you can use that here as well. Okay, and that's that. We've got 100 stacks. We're happy. We can just concentrate on DPS and damage mitigation now. So we've got chains. A bad chain combination would be you and a melee DPS, because melee DPS has to move around quite a lot. A great combination is you and a healer, because most healers aren't very... well, they don't move a lot, do they, healers? They just kind of stand there. With a ranged DPS it's fine as well. But for the most part, although we've talked about how to break the Jasper Chains, you don't actually need to break the Jasper Chains. It's not a big deal. Just deal with it and just keep them up the entire fight. In 10 man, because you've got 10 people minus the 2 tanks, you're always going to have your entire raid chained at some point. So if you break the chains, you've then got 2 people without chains, and you're immediately going to get chained again. So it's kind of pointless to worry about breaking them when you're just going to get rechained. However, if your stacks are getting a little bit high, or if you need to recover the tiles on the floor, then it's okay to spread apart from your chain buddy whilst you've got the Jasper petrification happening. Let's talk talents. This is the talent spec I used for this fight. Really the only thing that's going to be important, I think, is the top tier, and you're really looking at choosing between Post Haste and Crouching Tiger Hidden Chimera. It's entirely up to you. Post Haste is going to give you a speed boost after you do a disengage, and Crouching Tiger is going to give you much reduced cooldowns on disengage and deterrence. And deterrence is quite useful on this fight. It's one of the few fights where it's almost a must that you have to use it. To go with that, I'm using the Glyph of Deterrence, which just increases the damage mitigation that goes with it. So why would we need to use deterrence? Well, in a couple of instances it just kind of bypasses the damage or mechanics. So in the case of the cobalt trap, we can deterrence through those. If you get a couple of cobalt kind of traps stacked up, then you can clear those with deterrence. It's also useful if you want to break your chains, your Jasper Chains, as I've just done there. If the stacks are getting quite high, I've mentioned earlier there was a scenario where you might not want to break your chains, and that's essentially if the Jasper Guardian's power is going to pop 100 before you can reach 15 stacks. You might want to break your chains in that instance, so deterrence is very useful at that point as well. Now I'm actually with a druid healer here. He's used symbiosis on me that gives him deterrence, and he gets the good version of deterrence. So that's the one with, I think, both glyphs applied. We get dash from a druid in return, and dash, and that's why I've picked post haste, I think are quite useful because it gives us a lot of maneuverability. So when we at the start of a fight, when we want to get the floor tiles lit up, it's very useful for that to use dash or a disengage plus post haste. So whichever talent you want to pick, that's fine. I think they're both good. They've both got their benefits on this fight. The rest of them are pretty much standard, whatever you really prefer from a DPS point of view. Now I've gone with survival. That's just, again, a personal choice. If you want to use Beastmaster, that's absolutely fine. But if you are using survival, there should always be 2 of the Guardians stacked together, even on 25 man. Now, multi-shot as survival is good, but if you're using Thrill of the Hunt, you're going to get a lot of reduced cost multi-shots, and actually it's not always beneficial to just waste all of those multi-shots on the Stone Guardians when they're clumped, because there's only 2 of them. So it's actually more beneficial to use your 3 arcane shots on a single target, and you can just fire a multi-shot every 10 seconds or so to refresh your Serpent Sting on the other ad. Now in terms of explosive trap, it's always a little bit hard to gauge when the Guardians are going to move because it's the tanks that are dealing with that. So ideally, the way I kind of worked it is I'd put an explosive trap down the first time that it was off cooldown after a Guardian had moved, and then after that I would use a Black Arrow single target. Really what we're looking for is the lock and load procs from that rather than the damage from the explosive trap or Black Arrow. Other than that, there's not really a lot to say. This fight isn't a DPS centric fight. There is a berserk timer, but you'd have to be pretty hard pressed to not hit it. We actually ran with 1 less DPS, so we had 4 healers on this fight, and we hit the berserk timer, but it was fine. So stay out of the pools, stay out of the things on the floor that's going to do damage. If you get chained, be a good chain buddy. Don't break it and, you know, cause extra damage. And sooner or later, you're just going to get the boss kill. I'm not going to lie, it is a hard fight. It took us 56 wipes, which was our worst experience so far in Mr. Pandaria. But hopefully your tanks are going to be a little bit smarter and get this fight down a lot sooner than that for you. Okay, I'll leave the encounter running in the background so you can see just how badly we did on it. More skeletons added to the pile. Join me next time when we're going to be progressing through Mogu'shan Vaults, obviously. We've still got some more normal mode guides to put up as well, so look out for those, and I shall see you next time.